we're still here after so many years using TYPO3, developing TYPO3, and it didn't always look that nice and funny actually on the TYPO3 side. And actually, if we would have talked about that topic like 2 years ago, actually 1 year ago, it's like, well, we have all the other competitors, all the other cool new products that are way better than TYPO3, and it's actually dead. So we need to, revive it, or do we want to revive it? And that's where we come from, or where we were. Let's say 1.5 years ago, we had this 6.2 release, and it was always the question, is that the last version before Neos is actually taking over TYPO3, and TYPO3 doesn't need to be developed any further? And it was a valid question. Actually, I was approached 1 year ago, and people yelling at me, please stop developing TYPO3, use Neos and develop Neos. And it's not that I don't like Neos, I really like these guys and the product, but I make my living out of TYPO3 CMS. And most of you do probably, and that's something that I really want to invest my time in it. But it was always this problem, it's like this huge old code base, this legacy code from 2002 for Internet Explorer 4. It was actually still in there. It was all just plugged in by this guy who contributed once, and the other guy, and who did it completely different. So the whole system didn't feel like one application, basically. And then we also, with TYPO3, you can do, I don't know, let's say grids for content or structured content elements in like 10 different ways. And you can edit one single element on like 2,000 different click menu things and whatever. And although it's cool that you can do that, it's actually not, we don't consider it, or we never considered like one true way of doing things in TYPO3 and streamline the way how editors work with it. And then, of course, TYPO3 is slow. It's a huge code base, and it's like it gets slower every version, and also it looks the same. So I upgraded to 6.2. It still looks the same basically, but it's slower than 4.5, which I had before. And so these are the things that actually led a lot of people to believe TYPO3 is dead. They always said, or I said, I want a better looking content management system. There are tons of others out there. It's old fashioned, no fancy editing elements, whatever, ideas. It still really behaves the same way. It's again too slow. And also, there's no vision. You just release a next version. It has something different. Something old does not work anymore. Where's the whole thing leading towards? So basically also what's happening after 6.2. And then we also have the people that always rant, people that always come up with the same statements, which are just not up for discussion, like, it looks ugly. Okay, that's your opinion. But also it's hard to learn. And of course we try to lower the barrier, but it's also still, it's something you need to learn if you work with it, if you integrate it, develop it. And that's pretty much the state from the last, or that we got 14 months ago. And since then, Mathias and me basically took over and got a lot of feedback, and the feedback actually gets better and better. We also do things, not just talk, which is also something to do. But we feel like we're in the Renaissance. So basically we were dead, but we're reliving, and we come up with new ideas, look at things differently than in the past years, decades, whatever you want to name it. And we also found out old does not mean bad. It actually means we're not 20 anymore, so we don't make the mistakes twice. Or we can do the mistakes twice, but we don't want to do them anymore. So that was actually our feedback that we we were sitting together, okay, what things did not go well? And let's take this experience and make something better out of it. Just like in the video you've seen before, it's actually something good that we're around since 18 years. We're adults. We're not just like a 2-year-old product. And we've developed our way to that point. And we've made mistakes. And we've tried. People came to me and said, okay, if you want to do version 7, why don't we start from scratch? It's like, yes, but then we would take a long time. Maybe we would do it differently than 10 years ago, but still, it's not something that you just do in a month or something. So that was not an option. So we decided not to write everything from scratch again. And then we also had the trouble, it's like, okay, I have this website and it takes like 50 days to upgrade because it's so huge. Why is that so hard? And why it's so expensive for the customers? We wanted to remove that obstacle from what we were planning. And then we also wanted to shape the things that we've already done. We wanted to not just throw it away, but see, okay, this part is really good, and we want to make it so it's universally usable. We want to improve that instead of just throwing it away and take another, I don't know, XJS component and use it from somewhere else. Sometimes it makes sense, and sometimes it doesn't, because the things we have are actually really good and reliable. And that also means that we should focus on our strengths. So I had one project that we took over with TYPO3 where the other content management system, every page was one huge rich text editing field where you just can copy and paste from Word all the images, all the links. And actually, it didn't make sense at the time or like if you know the approach of TYPO3 of splitting it into separate fields, then you can do actually something with the data, put it into APIs into different platforms. That's actually something good. And the approach of putting everything together in one database field or one big chunk of data is not really feasible. It got better, but still, why should we change the thing that worked for us so well in the last 18 years?
So, that's me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So, if we take a look where we wanted to get through, it's not necessarily so much about tech, right? It's more about how you deal with people being clients or agencies, which is basically the same to us. It doesn't matter. So, the most important thing is, when we restarted the product, or re-kicked off the product, the first and foremost thing we wanted to do is be reliable. With all the delays that are happening, and that's not necessarily bound to TYPO3, right? Other open source content management systems delay over and over again because they face difficulties. But we consider reliability a very, very important thing. Because if we promise something with the feature and the deadline, and we don't deliver that, you might be mad at us. That's kind of okay. But if you promise that to your client will be mad at you, not at us. The client doesn't care, right? So reliability is something that's really, really important. And the next important thing that we need to take care of is, what is our main task? We need to solve problems. And in the end, everything we do as an industry is about creating value. So our main challenge in developing TYPO3 is to make it easy for you guys to create value. That's one of the most important things. And on the other hand, with this whole, I call it project surroundings, it was always like, just keep TYPO3 somewhat alive. You don't need to do cool things, just keep it breathing. But we wanted to be like smart again, or allowed to be smart again. And the same, we wanted to be innovators again. And this is stuff that you can actually see in the current release, because we're the first content management system that implements the PSR7 standard. And now other content management systems approach our development teams and ask for guidance and help how to implement these things. And that's just because, you know, like, it's kind of the team was let off the leash. And now they may do stuff again. And the tricky part is how to get people together that share that common vision, right? So that we are allowed to build great stuff again. Because there's a lot of, you know, like, hesitation and how does it work together. But we kind of figured that out. And in the end, it's about building great open source software. And this is something that I think a lot of people tend to forget, that what really drives open source content, not just content management system, but open source software, is motivation of developers, right? They want to see their stuff on the road. So think about twice if you want to, you know, like, use the old version for another 10 years, because keep your developers motivated. They are the people that actually build the stuff for you. So, about reliability. I think one of the most important things is keeping deadlines. And I don't know who has noticed, but Benni and I set up the roadmap for the 7 releases in mid-November last year. And we stuck to every single deadline with one exception. And this is because we had a major security thingy going on in the 6.2 branch, and we just slipped the deadline for a week. I think that's okay. So. Thank you. And the good thing is that what you can do, you know, we talked about creating value. And you can create value off that, because now what you can do, you can approach a client and you can simply show the client the deadlines and start building SLAs upon that. And start doing maintenance contracts and all these things, because now you can rely on deadlines. The next thing that we do is we show plans. As I mentioned earlier, we will not promise any functionality, because we value a tight deadline bigger than a feature. And we won't like rush in a feature, because it doesn't make sense, because in the end we're sending you into the field, and what happens is that you get shot, not us. So what we basically do is we had some drastic changes in our workflow. So for example, a lot of people complain about documentation, and we do not merge a single feature that needs documentation without the documentation being there. So that means that the TYPO3 documentation on the reference side of things is always up to date with the latest changes. So we don't do this whole, yeah, we'll document that later. I don't know.
And then somebody else had to do it. And these people loved to do it, but they were like, okay, that's the only thing I do, and I just have to look up all the 2,000 changes. And it took like 6 months to just get the documentation ready, and it's not the documentation team's fault.
Exactly.
It's because our workflow is not, you know, good enough.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of us work in tech, hopefully. Otherwise, you might have gone to the wrong to the wrong place right now. But you know that later equals never, right? So it's the same for bug fixing or documentation, or I'll call you back later, right? You don't want to call him now. And also one thing about reliability is we need to educate the TYPO3 ecosystem, right? How do you do things right? How do you make your website work fast? How can you reduce implementation times? Because this is what's interesting on a business point of view, right? You know, everybody gets complaints about, you know, we lost a client to some toy because it was cheaper to implement. So our main task is to reduce the implementation time of TYPO3. That's the main task that we're working on right now. And at the same point, make everybody a better TYPO3 integrator or developer. So all I can mention to that is send your developers to a code sprint. It makes sense for them. It makes sense for your company. Keep that in mind. And in the end, of course, this is basically the culmination of everything I put together before, is we want to deliver a high-quality product, right? So there's no fiddled-together duct tape code. everything we did in the 7 branch is high quality, and it even leads to conflict within the team because the developers want to, like release their stuff. But then we have quality assurance that basically goes like, yeah, but that's not the 110% solution, right? We want to do this right. And I don't know if you've compared the 6.2 branches and the 7 branches just from speed, right? So you click it and it goes like this. And we're going to get back to that later, just keep the stuff in mind. And then in the end, one of the key components is TYPO3 has to help you sell. That's the important thing about creating value. And if we deliver a strong product and a high quality product, it's easier to sell for everybody who owns an agency. And it's also easier to sell to your principal if you're working in a company and have your own development team. So a good product will always be, well, the better one. So as a logical consequence of all these things, we changed the release cycle of how TYPO3 is being released. And what you can see is that we have this small grayish area. Does that work? Wow, like this. And these are so-called sprint phases. So what we're doing is, instead of working on a schedule for we'll release in 6 months, which practically was more like 10 to 12 months, what we do now is that we have
deadlines.
Regarding deadlines,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So what we now do is that we have this pretty short sprint phases, and short meaning 6 to 8 weeks. And within that time, what we do is we focus on a certain area, on a certain topic, right? So the backend improvements, or well, we didn't do a performance sprint yet, but or front-end stuff, or whatever, you name it, right? So we have a topic that we focus on during that sprint. And after that, there's a short phase of 2 weeks, which is this one, which is our stabilization phase. So that means we're in stabilization phase, you can immediately go and test out the product, because you can be sure that you have like about 50 people just focusing on fixing and stabilizing what we built in the last 8 weeks. So that's really where everybody's responsibility kicks in. That's when we need the feedback. And another thing that we did, and this is what you can see here, right here, is that what we wanted to do is overlap 2 LTS releases to make integration easier and more sustainable for the client. Because what you will have is you have like a 3-year period, as it is now, and then you can jump on the odd release numbers, right? So you can go 7 to 9, 9 to 11, or you can go with the even numbers and you just go 6 to 8 and 8 to 10. Or you keep everything in between. And this is something that a lot of people, rightly so, complained about, that the transition phase between 4.5 and 6.2 was too short, although it was a year. But I know from one of our clients that it actually took us 11 months just to get everybody from management into one room, right? So that's the tricky part if you're working with international clients. And the next important thing is that we work so hard to make the transition from a 6.2 LTS to 7 LTS less painful. And just some number from the trenches for those who are interested. At our company, we just run, like, I think 2 6.2 installations. And everything else is on 7. And it was between 5 and 8% of the amount of work that you had to put into the 4.5 to 6.2 migration. So this is something that we already tackled.
And maybe here, the reason why you can do this now is because we started off with 7.0 last year. I think it was December.
Yep.
And people are like, no, next version. I didn't even, tell my client that they need to upgrade to 6.2. It's about having these small release cycles, and they all end at the 7 LTS, which we'll also talk later about. But that means that you can actually use the product. We don't have any betas or alphas and whatever. We have a small migration path between all the steps in between. And that means for our projects that we had, we started off with 7.2, for instance, and it took us 2 to 4 hours to upgrade to 7.3, check everything through, and then you do the next steps until 7 LTS. It's no big deal, and by the time 7 LTS is out, you know, your system completely runs smoothly, and you don't have to start your work after the LTS release. You can do it actually while we're developing it.
Exactly. So but basically, migrating websites is pretty much like if you try to renovate your home. The longer you wait, the more nasty it gets. This is something just to keep in mind. So, things we need to take care of, still need to take care of. We achieved some of these, but we're talking about creating value and overcoming challenges, right? Because that's your daily work. So, we wanted to create a fast editing experience for the editor, because in the end, we're in content management, right? So if we don't help the editor with their jobs, we failed. Simple as that, we failed. Then, of course, we still wanted to keep that, and I know it's exaggerated, but still, it's unparalleled flexibility. You know, within Tech Talks, a lot of people ask us when we were going to implement a feature, and we consider TYPO3 feature complete, right? Not because there's some fancy buttons missing, but because there's still the requirement for a project that TYPO3 cannot handle is yet to be born, right? And it's the same for almost 15 years, right? So we had a lot of challenges, you know, with the mobile web and accessible web, and what was the stuff before? Cross-media publishing, who remembers that? And TYPO3 was able to do all these things. So in terms of flexibility, I think we're still on top of what's possible. Then this is something we talked about earlier, lowering implementation times. And this works in 2 ways. So the simple way is that you can simply write a lower offer because you need less time. But if you work with your clients for a long time, maybe they are used to long implementation times, they'll simply make more profit. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between. And of course, we want to support building great websites. And websites are no longer this you know, like print ad that you put somewhere where somebody can view it on a computer. But websites become hubs for basically all communication that you do. So your website works in social media. It creates content for that. It works for building cross-media stuff because that's still things that are going on. We have clients that are running their entire print logic for catalogs and brochures based off TYPO3 because the translation workflow is there and all these kind of things. And in the end, they push a button and there's a file being generated which goes directly to the printing house, and they print like 20,000 things of these stuff. And this is also part of your website in itself, right? It's just technology that's used to be talked to over HTTPS. And one important thing that I need to mention is with TYPO3, you're basically able to grow, right? I mean, who's ever lost a client to WordPress installation? Don't be shy, see? That's a very simple thing to tell the client that basically chose WordPress. WordPress doesn't scale, right? So we can do that with WordPress, it's easy to do, but what if you grow? Because if you're growing, the last thing you want to think about is a complete relaunch of your website with a change of technology. That's the least thing you want to worry about that. And TYPO3 is able to start small and grow almost indefinitely. I mean, we've seen websites with, I mean, how many pages does the Technical University of Eindhoven have?
125,000.
125,000 pages? Easy. And then this is also something we want to mention, and a lot of people tend to forget this, is that TYPO3 also keeps the value you've generated, right? We're just in the middle of a project for a huge car manufacturer who's upgraded his Adobe CQ5 to web experience, and they basically rebuild the whole thing. They cannot use a single piece from that project. So it's another $2 million just to rebuild the website, and it looks the same. It's just a technology change. And this is, within TYPO3, the idea is that you can simply keep the value by having small and manageable migration paths, right? So imagine back in the days when everything you could do to upgrade a TYPO3 installation was exchange a symlink and run 2 wizards. And this is something that we didn't throw away on purpose. It was just that 4.5 to 6.2 was such a huge technology change that we had to do, because we needed to take the code base and like yank it into the next decade. But we want to keep that migration paths low and manageable again. And this is something that the team's really working hard on. Do the next stuff.
Okay. So, again, we don't want to throw away everything. We want to love what we have and what we actually love about TYPO3 and get rid of the rest. And there are things like there's a search called indexed search. Some people use Solar or whatever. And then there's the old search from 2003. And people still, I still use it. And I'm like, that's fine. Create an extension and use it for yourself or publish it. But it's not part of the core. We don't need to support stuff that I personally never used, but also is something that like 1% of the people need now for their websites. Like a search that doesn't scale. Yeah, we don't need to be compatible with like 10-year-old versions, meaning you've seen the graph, we only need to be compatible with the last version. We need to provide the upgrade path. So if you have 4.5 installation, you need to go to the next LTS and then to this LTS. And in between, there's a common way of how things are developed. That means you're safe in the 7 realm most of the time with your project. But if you upgrade from like 10 years ago, you will have problems, and that's software. Otherwise, we could not continue, to be the innovators again.
Yeah.
And then it's also about consistency. Like I mentioned before, with a 10,000 ways of editing content, we should make it consistent so everybody's using the same way of editing records and also saving data in a TYPO3. And then it's about, as we mentioned before, it's about having the people that are, we were sitting together, like 30 people in last September, and there were actually people like, okay, let's rewrite it from scratch. And it's like, okay, you need to make bold decisions, because a vision means we're going north. North does not mean south, of course, but also not west and east. And one guy said, okay, let's start from scratch in most of the areas. It's like, hey, I think we should go north, and you want to go south. Maybe you should go south because that's where your heart is, but TYPO3 is going north. And that's the key thing that we found out during that time. Everybody that goes in the same direction, we can create a lot of speed, a lot of energy, and the results were just mentioned in the last year, what you read about TYPO3 version 7 and how fast it got developed. So our personal goal 13 months ago was, we'll release version 7. We just released 7.0, etc., until 7 LTS, and then we'll see. We'll just put, the way we work into the product and see how it goes and where it goes. Maybe it's a dead end. We don't know. But we wanted to have the faster, better-looking backend. Check. We've found ways to streamline the code so it's easier for new people to understand how we deal with things in the TYPO3 core. That's from PHP to JavaScript, CSS, integrators, whatever. Just so people are like, okay, I know this from another system. I can just, apply the same logic. It's not that TYPO3 is doing the same, or it's like it's doing everything how they want to do it. We want to open up and make it possible for new people to contribute, which worked. And also, we wanted for ourselves actually to know when we can use version 7. So it's actually like Casper always said, the personal itch. I want to know, I want to tell my clients when I can use version 7, and I also want to use it then. And that's why we came up with a roadmap and the plan on when to release. And also we wanted to have the easier upgrades, because it is pain for us too. If you're running a company, you don't want to sell the upgrades, which are super expensive, and argue about it like, I don't know, 10 days for just talking and to the client, and then you need the developer for 100 days to upgrade. What if you tell the client, hey, it's way easier to upgrade now. It's not, of course, it's not free in the sense of one click to take the 1.5 years of development, but if your system's good, just go ahead and upgrade, and you pay a couple of thousand, let's say 10% of what you've paid last time. Everybody says, yeah, just do it.
And it just looks so much better.
And what happened with that, with our personal itches, it actually exploded, basically. We got people waiting for a long time. We got Felix Kopp, who's like, hey, I have something up my sleeves or in my drawer to redesign the backend. We're like, okay, let's use it. And then we had these code sprints, not about performance, but about something else. But it turned into performance code sprint, where the whole backend is like twice as fast now. And it feels simpler because it's streamlined with the whole icons and design concept. And we also wanted to have standards. That's the way you should do it from now on. People will complain because they want to go east and west, or west and east, whatever. But we want to go north, and that's the way we do it now in TYPO3. If you don't like it, you can implement it on your own. It's no big deal. It's open source, but it's not what the core should be doing actually. And we had so many contributors, and the development exploded because there were like people, hey, it's easy to contribute. I'll do that too. I remember Daniel Meyer. He's probably here in the audience. Yeah, he just stopped by at our office, and now he's like totally into the core. Like he stopped by in January, and now he's doing all sorts of stuff. Learned a lot of new things, and before he was always like, okay, core team, tell me what you're doing, and now he's actually part of it, of the 7 experience, and knows so much more, and that's something. Well, we didn't expect it. We couldn't even plan that, but it just happened. And we also have real-life projects, most of your customers, and a lot of our customers running with TYPO3 version 7 already since January, and it works.
So if you care about the environment, think about like running CMS 7. We've had a code sprint at a huge German hoster that actually told us that the TYPO3 7 servers could run twice as many page impressions on the same hardware as the 6.2 installation. So if you care about the environment, do that. Some things we wanted to show you also about creating value. I don't know who knows it, but we have the branded login now. So what you can do, right, it's not about just changing a logo, but you can actually brand the entire login screen to your client. And you should do so. Right? It's about getting a logo, and it's about getting some nice imagery, and it's 3 clicks to do that. But what you will create is a very, very strong binding to your clients, right? So you can either put your client's logo up there or your own, hint, hint, because every editor will see their login screen at least once. If they care about lunch break, twice a day. So another thing that we did, and only few people noticed, is that the backend basically works in a responsive way. And this really, really struck me when I was at the agency meetup in Bern 2 weeks ago, I guess. And a lot of people were just like, wow, now we can finally use that on a tablet, like really use it and not, fiddle around with pinching all the time. One of our project manager actually wrote a news article while in the car on the freeway. Well, he wasn't driving, he was sitting on the other side, but still, you can at least use that now. Another thing that a lot of people waited for is the image manipulation. So in case you don't know this, image cropping is now available. It's very intuitive and it's non-destructive. That's the important point, right? So you have the same image, you can scale it, you can crop it, but you will never destroy or alter the original image. And another small thing is what you can see up here is that you can also set aspect ratios for that. And these custom aspect ratios, that's the important thing, right? So I'm pretty sure everybody gets the problem with this slider elements on the root page and this very, very nasty 2x1 format, and nobody gets how to cut the images and things get stretched. Just set up the right aspect ratio and you will be done. I'll wait for the photo to be cool. And what we wanted to share with you are some quotes that we have received over the year with the TYPO3 development. And I want to start off with something really, really important for me personally. And this is what Helmut said, that TYPO3 will not implement any feature because the competition has it, because that's stupid product design. TYPO3 will incorporate a feature if it makes sense for the editor. And that's a small and subtle difference, but it's an important one. But on to the funny quotes. So this is the information I talked about earlier, that TYPO3 can handle like twice as many requests on the same hardware when you upgrade from 6.2 to 7. And depending on the hardware infrastructure you're running, it might be even more than that, because we reduced the amount of file I/O by roughly 95%. So if you still buy spinning disks, we got that. Another one by Franz Kugelmann, who simply said, it feels smooth, it's fast, and I know performance, right? Everybody talks about performance all the time, and it's 10% faster. You don't care. What you care about, how it feels, right? So perceived performance is something extremely hard to measure. Well, actually, because it isn't measurable, but when you use the TYPO3 backend, just click through it, see how fast it runs. It's incredible. Yeah, I think that's one from Italy, I guess, about UI improvements that we had. If I'm not mistaken, that's from Pakistan. So, in case you didn't know, we built the entire backend based on Bootstrap. That makes things very, very easy to implement if you need custom stuff in the backend, right? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Because what you would use the CSS framework of your choice, preferably Bootstrap, and then you can just work off all these things. This is from India, which basically tells us that we're on the right track. Right? So what we're currently doing, it makes us think, well, might not be.
I hope history making in a good way.
Yeah. That's also from India, if I'm not mistaken. I know the quotes are quite lengthy. It's like commenting. The next one we have is a bit shorter. It's from Russia, actually. And this is something we definitely want to stress. That was, Benny used to be in Paris at an agency meetup, and actually there was a tweet, of course it was in French, and we simply translated that, but in the end it translated to that the participant had never seen any CMS with such a rapid development cycle as TYPO3 in the last year. And this is where we actually want to go
basically
and stay on.
What we achieved in 1 year, he expected in 5 years.
Yep.
So that's actually good.
So since this is a tech conference, we need charts, right? So we just wanted to compare some minor things. So if we take a look within the 6.2 branch, we had like 230 contributors, give or take. In the 7 branch, we have like 270. And this was by the time of writing, I think, 3 or 4 days ago. So it might as well be more than that. Another important thing is that a lot of people were complaining about the open tickets that we had on the issue tracking system. And in the 6.2 branch, when basically Benni and I took over, we had about 4K tickets. And if you let that sink in for a minute, imagine in your company you would have 4,000 open support tickets. You know, you try to get... and the problem with a lot of open tickets is that you have motivated contributors who want to do stuff, but the tickets act like a fish swarm. Right? So you're not able to, okay, which one do I pick? Oh, no, okay, come on, screw this, I do something else. So what we did, by the time of the writing, we cut that down by roughly 1,800 tickets in 1 year. And what you can see is that we also drastically reduced the cycle time of a ticket. Right? So our current record holds by, I think, 3.5 minutes. Like report to closed. With a happy client, by the way. And then the same thing goes for code reviews, which is practically the same thing. So when we started, we had like 505 open code reviews. And this is how we maintain quality in the project, is that we have a 6i principle for code to get in. Right, because it's less error prone. And when we started that, we still had 500 open reviews. Right now, we're at roughly half of that. And this is basically what we did within this time frame, and we're not done yet. Right, that's just the history of the last 12 months.
And of course, there are still issues and topics we talk about so long and so much. There's still room for improvement, but I think it's a good start.
Definitely. So here you go, that's your part.
Yeah, so today, finally, it's today, October 22nd.
Today is today, yeah.
Yeah. We can release the release candidate for the LTS version, which we'll do tonight, probably. Which also means... Which also means that on November 10th, we're going to release 7 LTS, as promised in fall, and you can use it right away. We do it, actually.
Yep. Ganz ein weiter.
And of course, that's a reason to party, so you can organize a release party in your area. There are tons of release parties already planned, so you can also join them and celebrate, because it's actually really a cool version to have. But most important, to close up and to sum up everything, we're not here to show you, hey, we're great guys, and this is what we've done in the last year. We're going to retire now. It's actually how it started. How we started, and I think it shows that there's still room for improvements and still lots of ideas now that we have this common ground on how we work together, how the code is being written, and how the product is going to be used. We, of course, or everybody of us, needs to use and sell it, but that's actually how it starts. So you can go and use it, and we're going to continue developing it. Maybe not with version 7, but maybe with version 8.
With 8, yeah.
Not maybe, we will do. And that's why, coming back to the beginning, we're still here, and we think we're better than ever before.
Okay,
Thanks for listening.
Questions?
Thank you, Benni and Mathias. Are there any questions?